poor, she was involved in some very shady business practices. Teresa's clinics received millions of dollars in donations, yet their conditions were appalling. There was a disturbing shortage of medical care, systematic diagnosis, and necessary nutrition, as well as a decided lack of painkillers. Teresa once told a cancer patient that pain means Jesus is near you, and that suffering is an opportunity to share in the passion of Christ. Teresa said that she compared suffering to kisses from Jesus, to which the patient replied, "Please tell Jesus to stop kissing me." One of Teresa's most outspoken critics was Christopher Hitchens, the English journalist, literary critic, and anti-theist who wrote the extended essay, The Missionary Position, Mother Teresa in Theory and Practice. In one article, he wrote, "This returns us to the medieval corruption of the Church, which sold indulgences to the rich while preaching hellfire and continence to the poor. Mother Teresa was not a friend of the poor. She was a friend of poverty. She said that suffering was a gift from God. She spent her life opposing the only known cure for poverty, which is the empowerment of women and the emancipation of them from a livestock version of compulsory reproduction." He went on to accuse her of hypocrisy for opting to receive advanced Western treatment for her heart condition when she routinely denied even painkillers to her patients. Hitchens was called by the Vatican as a witness to give evidence against Teresa's canonization process. During that time, Hitchens had the opportunity to speak to Teresa. He reported, "It was by talking to her that I discovered, and she assured me, that she wasn't working to alleviate poverty." He said, "She was working to expand the number of Catholics. She said, 'I'm not a social worker. I don't do it for this reason. I do it for Christ. I do it for the Church.'" In keeping with her seemingly masochistic tendencies, on several occasions Teresa only offered prayers and medallions of the Virgin Mary to victims of natural disasters in India, rather than actual aid, monetary or otherwise. Teresa also had some rather dubious political contacts, and she is accused of accepting a financial grant from the Duvalier dictatorship, which is deemed responsible for the murders of over 30,000 Haitians between 1957 and 1986. Finally, and perhaps most disturbingly, Mother Teresa's charitable foundations raised hundreds of millions of dollars during her lifetime, but much of that money appears to have vanished into several secret bank accounts that the nun kept. This is the money that was supposed to fund proper care for the poor and the sick. The most likely explanation is that Teresa, over the course of her life, siphoned millions of dollars out of her charities and into the coffers of the Roman Catholic Church. As we saw before, her allegiance was not with the sick, but with the Church. So what should we make of this? Does Teresa deserve her canonization? By Catholic standards, apparently so. She did more to spread Catholicism than many, many others. However, it was at the expense of the health, comfort, and humanity of her patients. Her hospitals became known as houses of the dying, where she and her sisters would baptize the ailing without their consent or understanding. They were out to make converts, not save lives. If someone got a roof over their head in the process, well, that's great PR. She opposed abortion and birth control in one of the most cripplingly overpopulated countries on Earth, thereby ensuring the vicious cycle of poverty continued. Without this image that the world seems to have crafted for her, it's clear that Teresa was simply not a humanitarian. Nor did she claim to be. Her first and only goal was to further the kingdom of God, something that many people, unfortunately, seem to applaud. All this being said, Teresa's legacy is not all bad. As one of Teresa's critics said, "If the extraordinary image of Mother Teresa conveyed in the collective imagination has encouraged humanitarian initiatives that are genuinely engaged with those crushed by poverty, we can only rejoice. It is likely that she has inspired many humanitarian workers whose actions have truly relieved the suffering of the destitute and addressed the causes of poverty and isolation without being extolled by the media." Hopefully the next time an enterprising nun shows up to save the day, we'll have some higher standards and end up with a saint that truly deserves the title.